The air in the conference room was thick with tension, the kind that made every breath feel like a chore. I sat there, my fingers gripping the edge of the table so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Across from me, the CEO, Richard Grayson, was pacing back and forth, his expensive leather shoes clicking against the polished floor. His voice carried an edge of irritation as he spoke, but all I could focus on was the way my pulse thundered in my ears. "You've had your chance," Richard said sharply, stopping mid-step to glare at me. "We gave you opportunities, resources, and yet here we are. Underperforming. Again." He didn't even look at me when he said it, instead directing his words to some invisible audience beyond the glass walls of the boardroom. My stomach churned. This wasn't just about numbers or targets, this was something deeper, darker. It felt personal, though I couldn't quite put my finger on why. Not yet. But what hurt most wasn't the accusation, it was the dismissal in his tone, the way he spoke as if I were nothing more than a line item on a spreadsheet. "Disposable. Do you have anything to say for yourself?" he asked finally, turning toward me. His eyes flicked over me briefly, cold and calculating, before moving away again. I opened my mouth, but no sound came out. What could I say? That I'd been working tirelessly behind the scenes, ensuring our Middle Eastern clients felt heard and valued? That without me, communication would crumble because I was the only one who spoke their language fluently? Somehow, none of that seemed to matter here. Instead, I simply shook my head, feeling the weight of defeat settle heavily on my shoulders. "Fine," Richard said, his voice clipped. "Effective immediately, consider yourself relieved of your duties." He gestured vaguely toward the door, already turning his attention to the next agenda item scrawled across the whiteboard behind him. And just like that, it was over. My name is Layla Hassan, and until 20 minutes ago, I thought I knew where I stood in this company. Apparently, I was wrong. So very wrong. As I gathered my things into a cardboard box, a humiliating ritual reserved for those deemed unworthy, I replayed the events leading up to this moment in my mind. Had I missed signs? Should I have seen this coming? But no matter how hard I tried to rationalize it, the truth remained, they fired me. And worse still, they didn't understand what they'd lost. It started 3 years ago when I joined Global Connect Enterprises as a junior account manager. Back then I was fresh out of college, armed with a degree in international business and fluent Arabic, a skill set I thought would make me indispensable. At first, it did. My ability to bridge cultural gaps quickly earned me respect among both colleagues and clients alike. The regional managers relied on me to smooth over misunderstandings, negotiate contracts, and maintain relationships with key partners across North Africa and the Gulf region. Without me, deals would fall through, trust would erode, and profits would plummet. Or so I believed. What I failed to realize was that while I might have been essential to operations, I wasn't irreplaceable in the eyes of upper management. To them, I was just another cog in the machine, a faceless employee whose contributions blended into the background noise of day-to-day corporate life. They saw data points, not people. Metrics, not meaning. That disconnect became painfully clear during quarterly reviews. While others presented flashy PowerPoint slides filled with charts and graphs, I focused on stories. Stories about how I helped resolve disputes between teams halfway around the world, stories about late-night calls where I translated not just words but emotions, ensuring everyone walked away satisfied. But stories don't fit neatly into pie charts, and emotions can't be quantified. So my evaluations always came back lukewarm at best, peppered with phrases like needs improvement and lacks visibility. Visibility. That word haunted me. How do you become visible when your work happens behind closed doors, in languages most people don't speak? When success isn't measured by applause but by silence, the absence of conflict, the steady hum of seamless collaboration. Still, I persisted. Because deep down, I believed in the value of what I did. I believed in connection, in understanding, in building bridges where none existed before. And maybe, just maybe, I believed too much in the idea that good work speaks for itself. Walking out of the office that day, box in hand, felt surreal. Colleagues avoided eye contact, pretending not to notice as I passed by. A few offered awkward condolences, but their words rang hollow. After all, layoffs weren't uncommon in this industry. People came and went like seasons, leaving little trace of their existence behind. I stepped outside, blinking against the harsh sunlight. The city buzzed around me, indifferent to my plight. Cars honked, pedestrians hurried past, and somewhere in the distance, a street performer strummed a guitar. Life went on, as it always does. For a moment, I considered calling someone, my mom, my best friend, anyone, but decided against it. What would I say? Hey, guess what? I got fired today because apparently speaking Arabic doesn't count as a marketable skill anymore? No thanks. I needed time to process this alone. Instead, I wandered aimlessly, letting my feet carry me wherever they wanted. Eventually, I found myself at a small park near the office, its greenery a stark contrast to the concrete jungle surrounding it. I sat on a bench, staring blankly at the fountain in the center, watching water arc gracefully into the air before cascading back down again. Up, down. Over and over. Like breathing. As I sat there, a memory surfaced, one I hadn't thought about in years. I was 8 years old, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor while my grandmother taught me Arabic. She brought out her old wooden abacus, using it to explain numbers and letters in a way that made learning fun. Language is power, she told me, her voice firm yet kind. It opens doors, builds bridges, and lets you see the world through someone else's eyes. At the time, I hadn't fully understood what she meant. But now, sitting here jobless and adrift, her words resonated deeply. Language was power. And I had wielded it well, for a company that didn't appreciate it. The days that followed were a blur of restless nights and endless scrolling through job listings. Each application felt like tossing a message in a bottle into the vast ocean of opportunity, hoping desperately that someone somewhere would find it and pull me aboard. But hope is a fickle thing, and rejection emails began piling up faster than I could delete them. Meanwhile, whispers of chaos started seeping out of Global Connect. Rumors circulated online about strained relations with several high-profile clients in Dubai and Riyadh. Calls went unanswered, emails unopened. Projects stalled, deadlines slipped, and tempers flared. From the outside looking in, it seemed like the entire Middle East division was unraveling, and fast. At first, I dismissed these reports as mere gossip, the kind of exaggerated tales that often accompany corporate shakeups. But then I received a call from Ahmed, one of our longest-standing clients in Saudi Arabia. His tone was urgent, bordering on panicked. Layla, what's going on? He demanded. No one answers my calls anymore. Messages go ignored. Are you still with the company? I hesitated, unsure how to respond. Technically, I wasn't supposed to discuss internal matters with former clients. But something in Ahmed's voice compelled me to speak honestly. I'm sorry, Ahmed, I said softly. I don't work there anymore. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. When he spoke again, his frustration was palpable. What do you mean, you don't work there? You're the only reason we've stayed loyal to them all these years. Who will handle our accounts now? I didn't have an answer for him. All I could do was listen as he vented his frustrations, each word driving home the reality of the situation. Without me, or rather without someone who understood the nuances of language and culture, they were lost. Completely and utterly lost. After hanging up, I stared at my phone for a long time, thoughts swirling chaotically in my mind. This wasn't just about me losing my job anymore. This was bigger. Much bigger. Global Connect had underestimated the importance of human connection, of empathy and understanding. And now, they were paying the price. Weeks turned into months, and the cracks within Global Connect grew wider. News outlets picked up on the story, painting a grim picture of mismanagement and poor decision-making. Analysts speculated about potential mergers or buyouts, while disgruntled employees took to social media to share their own grievances. The once mighty corporation teetered precariously on the edge of collapse. Through it all, I watched silently from the sidelines, nursing a mix of anger and vindication. Part of me wanted to gloat, to march into Richard Grayson's office and say, see what happens when you disregard the value of real communication. But another part, the better part, knew that revenge wasn't the answer. Not yet, anyway. Because as much as I despised what they'd done to me, I couldn't ignore the fact that I still cared about the clients I'd worked so hard to build relationships with. Their struggles were real, their needs legitimate. And if Global Connect refused to step up, then perhaps it was time for someone else to take the reins. An idea began forming in my mind, tentative at first but growing stronger with each passing day. What if I could create something new? Something that prioritized people over profit, empathy over efficiency? Something that proved once and for all that language truly is power? One evening, as dusk settled over the city, I found myself standing outside the sleek glass tower that housed Global Connect's headquarters. Lights blazed brightly inside, illuminating the faces of executives scrambling to salvage what remained of their crumbling empire. Somewhere up there, Richard Grayson was likely pacing his office, stress lines etched deeply into his forehead. A strange sense of calm washed over me as I gazed upward. For the first time since being fired, I felt a spark of clarity. This wasn't the end of my story, it was merely the beginning. With renewed determination, I turned away from the building and walked toward the subway station, my mind racing with possibilities. Whatever lay ahead, I knew one thing for certain: I wouldn't let them forget my worth. Not again. And neither would the world. The subway ride home was a blur of fluorescent lights and distant thoughts. My mind buzzed with ideas, half-formed plans that tugged at the edges of my consciousness like restless whispers. What if I could build something, not just for myself, but for others who understood the importance of connection? A company that didn't see clients as numbers on a balance sheet, but as people with stories, challenges, and aspirations. The kind of company Global Connect should have been. As I stepped off the train and onto the platform, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. Well, not entirely. There was still a simmering resentment toward Richard Grayson and his short-sighted leadership, but it no longer consumed me. Instead, it fueled something else: determination. Determination to prove that empathy and understanding weren't liabilities, they were assets. Assets that could redefine how businesses operated in an increasingly interconnected world. By the time I reached my apartment, the vague outline of a plan had begun to take shape. It started with a name: Bridgepoint Consulting. Simple, yet meaningful. The word bridge symbolized everything I believed in: connection, communication, collaboration. And point represented focus, precision, clarity. Together, they conveyed exactly what I wanted this venture to be: a guiding force for companies navigating complex cultural landscapes. I grabbed my laptop from the kitchen counter and opened a blank document. 4 hours, I poured every ounce of frustration, passion, and hope into crafting a vision statement. Words flowed effortlessly now, each sentence building upon the last until I had something tangible, a mission I could stand behind. At Bridgepoint Consulting, we believe that true success is rooted in relationships. By bridging language barriers and fostering cultural understanding, we empower businesses to thrive in global markets while honoring the humanity of their partners. Reading it back, I felt a surge of pride. This wasn't just a business idea, it was a declaration. A promise to do better, not just for myself, but for everyone who deserved to be heard. The next morning, I woke up early, my mind racing even before my eyes fully opened. Today was the day I'd start turning this dream into reality. But first, I needed allies. People who shared my values and understood the power of cross-cultural communication. I scrolled through my contacts list, pausing on names of former colleagues, mentors, and friends who might be willing to lend their expertise, or at least offer advice. My first call was to Nadia, a close friend from college who worked as a freelance graphic designer. She'd always been supportive of my ambitions, often encouraging me to strike out on my own. When she answered, her voice was warm and familiar. "Layla. Long time no talk. How are you holding up?" "I'm okay," I said hesitantly. "Actually, I need your help." Without hesitation, I explained my idea for Bridgepoint Consulting. To my relief, Nadia didn't laugh or dismiss it outright. Instead, she listened intently, asking thoughtful questions and offering feedback. By the end of the conversation, she was on board, not just as a designer, but as a partner in crime. "You've got this, Layla," she said confidently. "And if anyone can pull it off, it's you. Let's make this happen." Her enthusiasm was contagious, giving me the boost I needed to reach out to others. Over the course of the week, I spoke with a financial advisor, a tech-savvy cousin who specialized in web development, and even Ahmed, the Saudi client who had called me during those dark days after my firing. Each conversation added another piece to the puzzle, bringing me closer to making Bridgepoint a viable reality. But launching a business isn't just about rallying support, it's also about facing harsh truths. One of those truths hit me square in the face when I sat down to review my savings account. After 3 years of working at Global Connect, I hadn't exactly been living paycheck to paycheck, but neither had I been saving aggressively. Starting a consultancy would require upfront costs: branding, website design, marketing materials, legal fees. Not to mention rent for office space and salaries if I ever hoped to hire employees. For the first time since conceiving the idea, doubt crept in. Was I being reckless? Naive? Maybe Richard Grayson had been right to fire me. Maybe I wasn't cut out for this kind of responsibility. Then I remembered Ahmed's words, "You're the only reason we've stayed loyal to them all these years." Those words weren't just validation, they were proof that what I brought to the table mattered. That my skills, my perspective, my ability to connect across cultures weren't expendable. They were essential. With renewed resolve, I decided to scale back my initial plans. Instead of leasing office space, I'd work remotely for now. Instead of hiring staff, I'd subcontract freelancers as needed. Every dollar counted, and I refused to let fear dictate my decisions. Months passed in a whirlwind of activity. With Nadia's help, I created a sleek logo and website that reflected the essence of Bridgepoint, modern yet approachable, professional yet personal. My cousin built a user-friendly interface that allowed potential clients to request consultations directly online. Meanwhile, I spent countless hours drafting proposals, networking on LinkedIn, and reaching out to former clients who might be interested in transitioning their accounts to my new venture. It wasn't easy. There were days when rejection emails piled up faster than I could delete them, leaving me questioning whether I'd made a colossal mistake. Days when self-doubt whispered cruel lies in my ear, telling me I wasn't smart enough, brave enough, good enough. But then there were moments, small victories, that reminded me why I'd started this journey in the first place. Like the email from a mid-sized logistics company based in Chicago. Their CEO had read about my background in an industry newsletter and wanted to discuss how Bridgepoint could help them expand into North Africa. Or the phone call from a startup founder in Berlin seeking guidance on negotiating partnerships with Gulf investors. Each inquiry reaffirmed my belief that there was a market for what I offered, a market that Global Connect had failed to recognize. One evening, as I prepared for a virtual meeting with a prospective client, I received a notification on my phone. It was a LinkedIn message, from none other than Richard Grayson himself. My heart skipped a beat. Why was he contacting me? Had he finally realized the magnitude of his mistake? Part of me wanted to ignore the message altogether, letting him stew in his own ignorance. But curiosity got the better of me, and I clicked open the thread. "Layla," the message began. "I hope this finds you well. I understand you've launched your own consulting firm, and I must admit, I'm impressed. Your reputation speaks for itself." I snorted aloud at that line. Reputation? What reputation? He hadn't cared about my contributions when I worked under him. He continued, "That said, I'd like to discuss a potential opportunity for collaboration between our companies. Perhaps we could schedule a call soon." My fingers hovered over the keyboard as conflicting emotions swirled inside me. On one hand, the irony was almost too delicious to resist. Richard Grayson, the man who had dismissed me so callously, now wanted to collaborate. On the other hand, this could be a chance to show him, and the world, what he'd missed out on. After a long pause, I typed a simple response, "Let's talk." When we connected later that week, Richard looked different somehow. Older, wearier. The confident CEO who had fired me without a second thought now seemed uncertain, almost apologetic. As he outlined his proposal, a joint initiative aimed at repairing Global Connect's fractured relationships in the Middle East, I couldn't help but feel a flicker of satisfaction. Here he was, coming to me for help because he had no one else. But beneath the surface, something deeper stirred within me. This wasn't just about proving a point or exacting revenge. It was about showing Richard, and anyone else who doubted the value of empathy and understanding, that real success isn't measured by profit margins or stock prices. It's measured by the connections we forge, the lives we touch, and the bridges we build. As the call drew to a close, Richard leaned forward slightly, his expression earnest. "Layla, I know things didn't end well between us. But I want you to know, I underestimated you. And I regret that." His words caught me off guard. Regret? From Richard Grayson? I hadn't expected that. Still, I nodded slowly, choosing my response carefully. "Thank you for saying that," I replied. "But actions speak louder than words. Let's focus on moving forward, and getting this right this time." He agreed, and we wrapped up the call with tentative plans to reconvene the following week. As I set my phone down, I allowed myself a small smile. This wasn't the ending I'd envisioned when I walked out of Global Connect's offices months ago. In fact, it wasn't an ending at all, it was a beginning. And for the first time in a long time, I felt truly unstoppable. Months later, Bridgepoint Consulting flourished, becoming a beacon of cultural understanding in the corporate world. Layla's partnership with Global Connect not only repaired their fractured relationships, but also set a new standard for empathetic business practices. Richard Grayson publicly acknowledged her invaluable contributions, offering her a seat on the board, a position she accepted, determined to reshape the company from within. Surrounded by a team that shared her vision, Layla stood atop a stage at an industry conference, delivering a keynote speech. As applause filled the room, she glanced at Nadia, Ahmed, and her family in the audience, gratitude swelling in her heart. She had turned rejection into triumph, proving that true success lies in connection, resilience, and staying true to oneself. The final slide of her presentation read, "Language builds bridges, empathy builds legacies." And with that, Layla smiled, knowing she'd built both.